Hey everyone, it's Natasha. Ooh, ooh. Glad to be here with you. Oh my goodness, episode 76. We're back. We're back to talk about the pros and cons of hiring and working for family. Let's start off with a quote. You want to start off with a quote? Let's start off with a quote from Walt Disney. Walt Disney said, "A man should never neglect his family for business." Yes, that's how we're diving into this conversation. I'm not playing with you. Walt Disney said it. Yes. So as promised, we're revisiting the topic addressed in episode 66. 10 episodes again. Did I say 10 episodes again? 10 episodes ago. And that was doing business with family. And I said we would break things down to help you with making tough and easy decisions about working with family. Now, in episode 66, the focus was on the customer seller perspective, where you're buying from or selling to family and all the potential traps you can fall into. So we're going to we're gonna start pulling back some of those layers. You with me on that? All right. So like I said, in episode 66, we looked at that perspective, and you're buying or selling to family and all of the potential traps that you can fall into, and like we said, that the contempt that tends to grow when people take for granted the familiarity of knowing you well. And then there are some families that work really well together and their businesses thrive. So we see success stories and we see absolute blunders, right? And you have to well, what's the magic sauce that certain people are involved with, or how are they getting it? How are they thriving? And I will say that great intentionality and thoughtfulness and awareness goes into those blended relationships. There's nurturing, personal and professional, in a way to limit conflict. Like, that is really, it has to be the focus to how we can be able to nurture these relationships, to limit conflict and to wear the right hat at the right time. So you can't be wearing the work hat during the family cookout, as we talked about, because that can create some havoc. Now, I wanted to be able to share some examples. And Jamie Trowbridge is the CEO of family-owned business, once family-owned business, Yankee Publishing in Dublin, New Hampshire. 3 generations have passed this baton. They have approximately 75 employees, and in 2015, they had reported about $22 million in revenue. In 2019, they began transitioning to employee ownership through an ESOP, which we'll talk about shortly. And imagine that your grandfather, your grandparents started it, passed it on, your father, you. We see this throughout countries, right? And let me just share a little bit about Jamie. He grew up in the business with his first job working on the maintenance staff at age 14. And during the summers, throughout high school, he would work for the family business. At age 28, after working 5 years in Boston and Seattle in the newspaper and magazine industries, he returned to the family business, and he was the production manager, and he was responsible for managing the layout, printing, and distribution of the magazine. In the year 2000, he was promoted to CEO. Now, as I said, his grandfather started Yankee Magazine in 1935. and acquired the Old Farmer's Almanac in 1939. Now, I don't know about if any of you know about the Old Farmer's Almanac, but my grandfather lived. That right there is a farmer's Bible right there. um, my grandfather lived, breathed, and ate that Old Farmer's Almanac. So Jamie's grandfather acquired that in 1939, 4 years after starting Yankee Magazine. And the almanac actually was the driver of the company. It made money and carried the not very profitable Yankee Magazine. So Yankee wasn't making any money, but the almanac was. And it carried Yankee until it too became profitable. And the company still publishes both, and including two or three other publications. And his grandmother was an artist, and she was the magazine's co-founder, and her artwork graced the covers of Yankee Magazine for 30 years. That's beautiful. In a 2016 interview with Family Business Magazine, Jamie said that the best thing about working in a family business is, quote, the long horizon allows you the comfort of making long-term decisions, end quote. But the worst thing is, as he shared, is that it's hard to put work aside. And thinking about Jamie's perspective about family business, is that, in his take on it, is that the business must take priority over the family. And he's quoted as saying, put business first and family second. The business has to be successful, so business decisions take priority, which is not an epiphany for any CEO. But I've seen family businesses go awry because they didn't put the business first. Now, he's there. I'm stuttering, right? Because I already know there's certain people like, what? But he says that working with family complicates work in a good way, and it complicates it in ways that are confusing, but we've always chosen to do what's best for the business, not what's best for the family. It's tricky, but that's why it has lasted 70 years. And some of you may cringe at those statements by Jamie, especially those of you who grew up, taking the back seat to the family business or your parents' career, and the money seemed to come first. And some will argue that the money is what pays for the home and the car and bills and clothing and necessities and luxuries. Yep, that's true. And it's also paying for lifetime therapy for children and adults who felt deprived, neglected, and alone. That's what some people have as their counter perspective, the counter argument. I mentioned earlier that Jamie's company has converted from family-owned to employee-owned by implementing an ESOP, which is an employee stock ownership plan. They did that in 2019. In a future episode, we're going to actually discuss ESOPs in greater details and other plans that your current or future company can consider. I know we talked about different benefit plans, and we've talked about different features, but I want to make sure that we always keep bringing in and sharing more in-depth topics and features of a business to help those of you who are starting, who are reimagining your business, and so that you are always aware of the various features and options you can have. Now let's get back to the main topic. So I've provided an example of a family business that's now converted into an employee-owned business. And clearly they made the switch because it's what's best for the company, right? What's best for their business is to be an employee-owned business. And there are some advantages for Yankee Publishing in the industry and with the product it sells. They publish books and magazines, calendars, and other periodicals, which means a publishing system that clearly outlines the high and low periods, which means that you can plan vacations and trips and events with greater confidence because you're not always on. And that's not diminishing at all. Trust and believe. But understanding that there is a publishing calendar that that they're following, allows them to create the necessary structure. For example, in the music industry, for the most part, offices shut down around the second or third week of December, and they don't reopen until the first or second week of January. Unless things have changed since, let's see, I was last in the industry in 2013. Unless things have changed drastically, that's basically how the framework is. And actually, the last time I actually had engagement with someone that's in the industry was in 2017, and that's how the it still ran. So I highly doubt that they reverted to a different model. So if you're looking at slowly tapping down after Thanksgiving, and then you don't ramp back up until the second week of January. So then guess when folks plan most of their travel and their vacations? Yeah, November, December, and the first part of January. So when's the slower period in our federal government, for instance? August. So if you're a federal contractor or you do business somehow with the federal government, you might find that scheduling may also impact you in how quickly certain things get through the bureaucratic line. So maybe you plan your vacation time around that as well. Maybe. But if your business has a brick and mortar, frame set up, and you have the customers coming and going 6 or 7 days a week type of infrastructure, it's harder to track and consistently pinpoint low periods. You may, depending on certain product lines, you can kind of gauge, but some businesses can't, or I shouldn't say can't, but have a difficult time tracking low periods like that, where you can actually shut operations down or minimize them, scale them back considerably, to have a skeleton crew of sort. So when do people buy hamburgers less? When do people avoid the nail salon, hair salon, or barbershop? When? What time? When is this? What period in a season do they do this? Heck, we saw folks still trying to force those same businesses to remain open at the start and height of this global pandemic. We saw people that were like, no, why does my barbershop have to close? Why does my nail salon have to close? Why? People. We saw it. So if your business is primarily or entirely online or virtual, you have greater wiggle room. It's clear. However, products that must be shipped by you and not a third-party distributor still are going to require your full engagement. So you have to then look at scheduling and being intentional with it. So let's look at how that impacts your family. If they aren't working for you, then they rarely see you because you're in work and grind mode, and they want you to take a break to spend with them. If they work for you, then they always see you, and they're wishing for a break, a vacation, probably from you. So how do you plan family trips if all or most of you are working for the business? If there's not enough qualified non-family members working for the company, then who can run things while you're gone? That's the thing you have to think about. You're really trying to wrap your. And the thing is, what we also notice is that a lot of people have a bad habit of only hiring family members because they don't want, they don't trust non-family. They don't trust strangers. So if we're all working for the business, how do we take breaks, vacations? Who can run things while you're gone? So either two things happen. One, there's no trips, or two, not everyone can take breaks together. So the family makes the sacrifice for the business, and the family keeps asking, how is this business going to free us? Because all they see and feel are shackles, right? Philip Green said, it's all about quality of life and finding a happy balance between work and friends and family. So let's look at our family members. When you're considering hiring one of your beloveds, what's the criteria? Do you have them complete an application or provide a resume? And when looking at their work history and experience, does it align with the job description and job posting? And if not, in what ways are they overqualified or underqualified? And what boundaries are established and enforced to keep the relationship lines from blurring and concocting a recipe for disaster? When I worked for my dad, we could ebb and flow pretty well because we chose to define the hats we wore and the boundaries. And just like when my parents worked together, my dad and I, we learned how to play our respective roles without ever cross-pollinating. We even had contracts that we negotiated by project or, with defined term limits. So, we made sure that our work relationship was respectful and clearly defined, and there was those demarcation and rules of engagement. So when we weren't in work mode, we were in full relaxed family mode. And then at work, we didn't allow the casualness to ever usurp professionalism, integrity, and honor. We valued our personal relationship and made sure to resolve or set aside personal matters so they didn't interfere professionally, and vice versa. And that's how we could work together and deal with the complexities of my personal life with my then boyfriend turned fiance, turned ex-fiance, turned boyfriend, turned ex-boyfriend, who we also worked with. It was always interesting to see how my dad would manage me and my ex, understanding that, he and I were always on the same page. My dad, that's who I'm talking about when I say he and I. We're always on the same page. Let's handle the business during business hours and the personal before and after business, but never during. While my ex would drag the personal stuff all through the business. And needless to say that after 4 years of that roller coaster ride, I stopped working with my ex and only communicated through my dad. I just had a no, we'll just use him as the middleman. And it's really interesting because I would communicate through my dad. And then when my dad passed from a heart attack, there was no more doing business from any direction. There was no middleman. And I couldn't run my dad's other company that I did contract work for. And you're probably saying, well, why? You did contract work for him. Well, that's because I was the immature, self-centered, determined to do my own thing, 20-something-year-old, and not, and I wouldn't allow anything and anyone to stand in my way. And I refused to learn about international trade and import-export commodities, letters of credit, etc., etc., etc. I even tried to convince my dad to mentor someone else to be able to take over the reins. And he says, how does that make sense if someone else would take over my business? You should take over my business. And I was like, yeah, whatever. So there was no one to pick up the mantle, the baton. His business died with him. And this is a pitch for why a family business can be beneficial. Because if everyone is pulling their share of the weight in cross-training, any retirements, long-term breaks due to illness or injury, or the longest break of ever, death, the company still has good to great odds of rebounding and staying afloat and thriving. Not always, but it's possible, and definitely more so than having no beneficiaries. It's important to determine the strengths and weaknesses of your family members and work solely towards and with their strengths. And where they're weak, you need to then focus on hiring someone to step in and fill that gap, right? Who has a strength, the thing, the skill, knowledge where your family member is weak. Find them, hire or contract with them. If your nephew is a great artist but lousy with numbers, then you don't assign him to handle the receipts and bookkeeping, etc. You focus on what he's good and great at. Create the same structure in your workplace that will allow all workers to thrive. So be mindful of breaks and work hours and not overworking family just because they're family. We have a tendency to treat family like the Energizer Bunny. Have you noticed that? And then complain when they burn out and say no. Gary Keller said that work is a rubber ball. If you drop it, it will bounce back. The other 4 balls, family, health, friends, integrity, are made of glass. If you drop one of these, it will be irrevocably scuffed, nicked, perhaps even shattered. Yeah. Now let's flip the lens and consider what and why we would want to work for a family member. Being family doesn't obligate me to work for you. Even though family has a tendency to guilt trip you into it, you shame when you resist. And for kids, oh my goodness, for kids, they often feel as though they really didn't have a choice. Earlier, I shared with you Jamie Trowbridge, and if you recall, he worked at the family business starting at age 14, and then in high school, he would work there during the summer. His family created the structure. They created the boundaries. If you see it right there, he wasn't working there every day before and after school, or before or after school and on the weekend. And then, do you recall, he had a gap in his employment there. After high school, he went off to college, started a career. After 5 years of working in the industry in Boston and Seattle, he returned at the age of 28 and worked his way up in the company. He was able to pursue his education, get outside of the nest and work elsewhere, building skills and acquiring knowledge and exposure outside of the family and family business, allowing him to learn from others and build an identity and form his own opinions and test his theories. There's structure and flexibility and boundaries. This is a recipe that allows family, especially children who can inherit the business one day, to have a greater respect and appreciation for the business and what it does. That is the magic sauce when it comes to having your kids come up in the family business. There you go. Structure, flexibility, boundaries. Maybe the full immersion, the always on, always sacrificing for the business is why so many 3rd and 4th generation businesses go under. The grandchildren are burned out. They grew up in it. They never had a break from it, never were given the option to step away and choose to return. Never were they aligned to a job by their strengths, but rather placed where there was a gap. They missed out on so much growing up because the business took priority. So what do many of them do when they're handed the keys and title of top boss? Boom. They sabotage and squander it. They run it into the ground until it dies a painful death. And all that the 2 and 3 generations work so hard for dies with it. As I've increasingly started saying, the goal is to find your replacement. If you're trying to climb up the ladder or off the ladder, find, train, support, and empower your replacement. Well, that applies to your family members too. Bring them aboard with this as an understanding, a commitment goal. If they want to grow in the company, position them to do so. We discussed this in episode 73, being a better manager leader. Don't pigeonhole, trap, shackle your family member or any worker to a specific role, title, position, department, or division. If they have dreams and goals outside of your business, allow them without guilt and shame to pursue those endeavors. If the agreement is to work for you for X number of months or years, your entire team needs to be looking for their replacement to hire, train, support, and empower the new person. so they can take the baton and run, and your family member can move onward to their next adventure. And it's celebrated and cherished, right? And all the contributions that they made to and within the company is celebrated. So back to considering whether to work for a family business. What is it about the company and its mission and values and vision and goals that intrigue and inspire you? You truly do need to think about that. Do you have a desire to grow within the company and or the industry? And could this be an opportunity to catapult you in your career? Could the family business be a stepping stone, a launch pad? Will you be paid fairly and on time? Do you get along with the family members who work for the business? How do you and they normally handle conflict? How well are the lines of communication? Is there general respect and dignity? Or is the boss big-headed and reigns like a maniacal dictator? Does your family respect boundaries? These are just some of the things you want to consider. You don't want that glass chipped or shattered. You know your temperament and theirs. If you know there will definitely be boundary disputes and trust issues and power struggles and other drama, reconsider. There's a saying that we save our worst behavior for those closest to us. And what we have to consider is how that behavior plays out in the workplace and home front. When the people we work with we're related to and we possibly live with them, we've seen money tear families apart. I've witnessed family members plotting and planning over inheritances and backstabbing over money and property. Just craziness. And this same cruelty can most definitely kick in over a family business. So it's imperative that a succession plan is created and updated frequently, outlining the who, what, how, where, when, and why as associated with each key stakeholder in the business. If the CEO retires, dies, or is incapacitated, I'm just tongue-tied, incapacitated in another way, what happens? Who steps in? Who steps in for the person stepping in? And so on and so forth. I mean, as a gap is created, because once again, if you're aligning people with strengths and not just filling them in, just putting a heartbeat in, what is the succession plan? As Paul Tsonga said, no one on his deathbed ever said, I wish I had spent more time at the office. We must create the balance, the flexibility, the freedom we desire. I used to hire my sister to do work for me when she was a child and even as an adult, but I never put her in a position where there was an expectation that she would work for me and inherit my business. It's one thing to say, hey, do you want to make some extra money on the side helping with XYZ? And an entirely different thing to say, you're working for the business because I said so, or because we're family and family looks out for each other. Trust and believe you will have them listening to episode 70 and deciding how they're going to exit your business. I strongly recommend listening to episode 73 and encouraging the managers and leaders within your company to do the same. So you can work within yourself to address what the company and employees need, so that you can help to reduce and eliminate the saboteurs who will try to destroy what has been built. And they'll do it from the inside out. I mean, isn't that the most defeating and deflating feeling, to know you were attacked from within? Betrayed by someone closest to you. Dolly Parton said, never get so busy making a living that you forget to make a life. Mm. Building a successful business is great, but the most significant memories that you and your family should have are those moments outside of the business. You and they don't want regrets. And too many of us put off life for career, for business, chasing clients, deals, money, influence, power, prestige to declare our success. My dad was a workaholic. He passed away at age 48. Never taking us on those family vacations, never taking us to the countries he visited for work, never running through the streets with me in Brazil for Carnival 2002. Too much stress, and his heart couldn't take anymore. And I don't want that to be your reality. Be intentional with the ecosystem you're creating and building, and ensure you have quality time for you, family, and friends. And if you have family members as employees, ensure that they have quality time set aside, which is what you should focus on as a priority for all of your workers. Death has an interesting way of derailing plans. All right, now, let's pivot and lighten the mood, shall we? Eleanor Roosevelt said, "The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams." Yes. I want to celebrate some dreamers who are determined to make a reality all that their hearts desire. It's time for business shout-outs. I need some theme music for the business shout-outs. If you got some theme music that you suggest, I'm going to find some theme music so we can get pumped up when we shout out folks. All right? So first up is Rathbun House, a house with a heart. They are a nonprofit hospitality house and the only one in Western North Carolina. It's supported by the W&C Bridge Foundation, and they provide a place of comfort for families outside of the area who have loved ones receiving care at Asheville and North Carolina area healthcare facilities. I want you to check them out. WNCbridge.org. They're on Instagram at Rathbun House, and they're located at 121 Sherwood Road in Asheville. Great services. I love what they're doing. So shout out to Rathbun House. Next up, Flowdesk. They're headquartered in San Francisco. They have what's called the world's most intuitive email builder, where you can design emails that look great on any device, and you can use a template or create your own from scratch, and people use it to design newsletters and more. Creators have said they've been able to put Adobe Illustrator on timeout, put it on the back burner, and use Flowdesk for creating and sending content. And they have fully responsive forms that are designed to convert, grow your list, and stay on brand. And you can connect your favorite apps through Zapier or integrate directly from, or with, I should say, Shopify, building workflows in seconds. They have a 30-day free trial, no credit card required. Their monthly fee is a flat rate of $38, and that gives you unlimited emails, subscribers, and access to all features forever. Yep. And in case you're wondering, you can migrate from MailChimp, ConvertKit, ActiveCampaign, and other email service providers fast and easy. So visit flowdesk.com for details. You can follow them on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest at Flowdesk, F-L-O Desk. There you go. And number three, shout out, Block Tech Systems. They are an IT system integrator and software development company focusing on small businesses and healthcare startups. They're located in Mississippi. Look at blocktechsys.com, and on Instagram, blocktech_systems. If you are a small business or a healthcare startup, this may be the team to help you get where you need to be. And then last but definitely not least, I had to throw some food in. You guys know me, right? I had to throw some food in. So Last but definitely not least is Shoku Ramen. Oh my goodness. Mm. Home of the Shinigami Challenge, and I'm a wimp and wouldn't be able to stand the heat or the amount of food that they put in the bowl. 20 years ago, yeah, but now, no. Let me explain to you this Shinigami Challenge. It has 4 million Scoville units of heat in there. Nah, my gut can't handle that. They have locations in Nevada. So in Vegas, they're open 24/7. That location's in Chinatown. It's about 10 minutes from the Strip. In Nashville, in the Hillsborough Village, they're open from 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. And Houston, they have a location there that's now open late in Houston Heights. Woo! You can order ahead, make reservations, or you can order for delivery. They create non-traditional ramen dishes and scratch made 24-hour broths. Oh, so savory. And they marinate their meats for 36 hours. So, you don't have to do the Shinigami challenge, right? You don't have to just burn your entire insides and your taste buds. They have temperatures from mild or a heat that is so unbearable that you'll beg them for mercy. But I want you guys to check them out at shokuramen.com. That's SHOKKURAMEN.com. They are on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at Shoku Ramen. And just be ready to fall asleep after you're done eating all that food. Oh, there you go. Well, folks, it's that time again. Time to wrap up and go our separate ways until next week. Please email all questions and suggestions to don'tcallitSmallBiz@gmail.com, or you can visit foremanllc.com/podcast and complete our feedback form. And before we part, let me share 2 quotes with you. The first is from Kate Middleton, and she said, "I think I know I've been working very hard for the family business. Sometimes those days are long days, and I think if I know I'm working hard and pulling my weight, both working and playing hard at the same time, I think everyone who I work with can see I am there pulling my weight." And on a funny note, last night the internet stopped working, so I spent a few hours with my family. They seem like good people. That quote is from an unknown source. Just had to share it. Oh my goodness. You guys, thank you so much for your love and support.